introduction, and thank you to the SLCT for having me. I've been with the SLCT for 8 years now. I joined June 2017, so this is it's nice to finally be able to speak to everyone. And when I joined, I didn't know anything about mushrooms. I was at the very fledgling, or the beginnings of my ecological journey, and this led me, I wrote about it in the newsletter. There's a plug for the newsletter if you didn't pick one up. But you can read about how I got into mushrooms there, and it's, now I'm fully affiliated. So without further ado, we will get started. Me. That's a picture of me when I worked as a gardener in Central Park Conservancy, and that is where I got interested in mushrooms. Joined the SLCT in June 2017, joined the Conservancy that August, and then was there for about 5 years, then went to a preserve just 45 minutes north of here in Garrison, New York, was there for, in a state technically, was there for 3 years, and now in this January 2025, I left that to pursue mycology and mushroom education full time. I have the New York Mycological Society. That's where I learned a lot of my mushroom education, and I've helped found the Cape Cod Mycological Society, or Rehydrated, which is where I'm living now. MushroomMonday.com is my newsletter. That's my little logo. That's my mustache on the slug. So it's a free weekly newsletter that goes out typically every Monday. So you can sign up at the website, and there's a lot of mushroom education there, mostly ecological. Today, we're going to focus on what I call the fungal umbrella. So I got interested through an ecological lens, but in mushrooms and in fungi, there's a lot more than just what they're doing in the environment. There's foraging, cultivation, culinary, bioremediation, sustainability, art, psychedelics, and medicinal. And we're going to touch on them all today, and I'm hopefully going to keep that within 30 minutes, because I don't want to have you sitting here all night. Before we get started, this is an important question I ask to start most of the walks. Some of you have come out on some of the mushroom walks I've done for the Land Trust. Does anyone know the difference between a fungus and a mushroom? And I know, Mark, you know, but we'll defer to you. Oh!
I don't know how, this is just a guess, but
yeah,
for participation points.
Yeah.
Is a mushroom just a type of fungus?
Essentially, yeah. The mushroom is the fruiting body of the fungus. So the fungus exists essentially as thin strands, either in wood or soil, and we'll look at some other places that they live too. But it's, a lot of times you can't see the mycelium. That's the body of the organism. The mushroom is the fruit. So the analogy that's made a lot is the mushroom is the apple, and the fungus is the apple tree. So that should at least be a baseline understanding, so we all have a little bit of better fundamentals going into this. I do want to talk about the ecology. That'll probably be the slowest part, but that's what I'm most interested in. And then after we look at these, I'll give you some references for identification both online and in person, and future takeaways and what you can do if you too want to get interested in mushrooms, or even just learn a little more. If you get inspired tonight, we'll see how well I do. But there are four main ecological functions. The mushrooms you see in the forest, for the most part, are going to be doing these two. They're either saprobic, decomposing. So these are red-belted polypores. I saw these actually in France. I was there for a family reunion just back in September, and they're digesting these long conifer logs. This was an area that was actually logged, and I think they just left these logs here, and now the mushrooms are eating them instead of them being milled into wood. And then this is mycorrhizal. So this is, we were talking a little bit earlier about how mushrooms or fungi can talk to each other. This is a spruce tree up here. These mushrooms are growing right around the base of the spruce. So mycorrhizal is fungus or myco mushroom, and rhizal root. So the tree establishes a relationship with the fungus in the soil, and the tree sends nutrients that it produces through photosynthesis down into the roots, and in exchange for water, nitrogen, phosphorus, other nutrients that the fungus is able to uptake from further out in the soil. So it's essentially a marketplace of a sorts, and the tree will, send up to 40% of the sugars it produces in photosynthesis down to the fungus. The fungi can be picky. I've just learned this, that some, particularly the ectomycorrhizal, those are ones that wrap around the roots. Some actually will enter the roots. But the ectomycorrhizal ones will pick and choose their partners. They can kind of be particular. If the tree isn't giving them enough sugars, they'll go to another tree and find a better deal for the nitrogen and water that they're uptaking. So it's a pretty robust and interesting ecology happening underneath the soil. And we typically only see these mushrooms fruiting out from that network underground. Okay, these two are a little more niche. On the left there, I went to Ecuador last spring, and this is a bullet ant with an entomopathogenic fungus growing out of it. It's in Ophiocordyceps. But essentially what happens is, has anyone heard of zombie fungi? They made like a TV show on it on HBO. And so what happens here is this ant gets infected with a fungal spore, and the fungus, I actually wrote about this yesterday for anyone's keeping up with my blog. The fungus can start to colonize the outside of the ant, and it'll produce they're called apressoria, which put pressure on the exoskeleton and eventually drill into the ant to allow the fungus to get inside, where it then digests the ant and grows this whole unique fruiting body outside of it. Those affect ants. There's different types of entomopathogenic fungi, but in the environment, fungi can also be pathogens or parasites, and that's one ecological service they do, keeping insect populations in check. The ants have their own defenses set up. They've evolved together, so sometimes ant guards won't let an ant that's infected back into the colony, and they'll actually decapitate the ant. It's pretty hardcore. And then the guard will kill it. The guard will basically seppuku and kill itself because it gets infected too. So it's a whole thing. It's like a pretty interesting ecological maneuvers they're both making. And then endophytic. These are fungi that live inside plants. In the same way that fungi are wrapping around the roots or even entering them, they can live entirely inside plants. So this is a white oak tree that the neighbors had cut down. I actually got the wood to drill shiitake logs and plug shiitake in it. I let some of the logs sit for too long, and then these little black cups started popping out. These are the fruiting bodies of a fungus that lives entirely inside these white oak limbs. So when the white oak is healthy, it's a very stable temperature in there, very stable humidity. It's a pretty comfortable place to live. Direct nutrient exchange from the plant cells, and in return, the fungus can produce other compounds that help the tree ward off infection or other disease and help it withstand drought. So there's a nice symbiosis going on, but when the plant host dies, its home, it needs to produce mushrooms to send spores, those are like the apple seeds, somewhere else to find a living partner. All right, so those are the four ecological relationships that fungi do in the woods that we're looking at today. Maybe something more interesting for folks is going out and finding something to eat. Does anyone recognize any of these mushrooms? Yeah, we got some nods. Yeah, chicken of the woods, lion's mane, morels, hen of the woods. In the Northeast, there's say about like 10 to 15 choice edible mushrooms that people go out and forage. These are 4 of them, but these are 4 that you would get on essentially any of the SLCT preserves. Morels are a little trickier, but the other 3, and lion's mane a little, but actually Roger and I saw lion's mane at the Altschul Preserve when we were doing a barberry pull. So that's even more incentive to come out to some of our volunteer projects. You might find edible mushrooms. Anyway, there's 10 to 15 choice edible mushrooms. It's kind of like a bell curve. Going up, there's a lot you can eat, but they are too woody. They might, not be palatable. They're too rubbery. There's just texture isn't right, or the taste isn't there, or they just like melt in the pan. But they're not toxic. Now, coming down the bell curve, there's some that'll give you gastrointestinal distress, an upset stomach, maybe you throw up, but they're not going to kill you. And then around here, there's 5 to 6 species that are lethal. I had one of them going up during the slideshow, the Gallerina marginata, the funeral bells. They all have like very hardcore common names, like funeral bells, destroying angel, death cap. Yeah, there's a lot of so. But there was a big story out of Australia. Did anyone see that? The woman, who poisoned her in-laws with, there's a lot going on there. But she poisoned her in-laws with a death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides. So these are 4 choice edibles out of probably the 10 to 15. Has anyone gone foraging for mushrooms? Mark, right? Yeah, we got a couple nods. Yeah, so, if you come on one of the SLCT mushroom walks, the last one we did in the Harrier Preserve, we found both chicken of the woods, and we found yellow oysters, which there's a picture of up there. So you never know what you're going to find. It's been dry, so if it's dry and there's not many fungi in the woods, then you can cultivate. So on the left here are the shiitake logs. There's 4. I have 20 actually in the yard. This is how I set them up, kind of around the shade of a tree. But that's a whole project we could, you can do is drill into recently dead wood and plug them with a fungus to get essentially the mushroom you want. I did shiitake in this case, but you can get an edible mushroom to grow off them. And they say for every inch of the log you get a year's, or it'll fruit. Usually fruits twice a year. But, if you have like a 5-inch log, that's 5 years of fruiting. And then the other are blue oysters, and that's a little different one. That's growing out of a cardboard box, and I just put straw in there. So, you can use any real organic household waste. You can use coffee grinds, sawdust, or wood chips. Oysters are vigorous eaters and decomposers. They'll eat essentially anything. Well, those are two easy ways to get edible mushrooms in your yard if you're not, if it's not, if you're not finding anything out in the woods. This is a little more intense. This is Tivoli mushrooms up in the Hudson Valley. They're large-scale cultivators, and this is what indoor cultivation looks like. It's a lot of times in these plastic bags. These are 10-pound blocks, and they inject the fungus into these sterilized bags of sawdust, and the fungus eats that and grows out of those bags. They're kind of coddled. I like doing cultivation outdoors because it's more realistic. The fungus is exposed to more of the normal pathogens that it is in its, everyday life. It produces more compounds, so it has not only more robust flavor, but more medicinal value and nutritional value than, if it's just eating sterilized sawdust. It's, that's already macerated and basically pre-digested for it. But yeah, these are the 2 types of cultivation that people are typically engaging in, whether, most small-scale people are doing like outdoor DIY stuff, and then this is what a larger grow operation looks like for commercial suppliers. culinary. So this isn't, everyone always asks, right? Everyone likes finding edible mushrooms and foraging. That's not necessarily my forte, but I don't not do it either. So this is, again, when I was in France, I was excited because they love mushrooms over there. So I went out, we went to the woods, we were in Alsace, and I found, I believe, 7 edible mushrooms. This is cep, or porcini, on down here, and then these are parasols. There's a lion's mane up here, wheat lacoche, or corn smut. That's one, if you live near a corn farm, you can find. It's a pathogen on corn that ruins the corn crop, but it actually produces a very nice edible fungal product instead, or mushroom. And it's a delicacy in Mexico. And then there's a puffball up top. And I turned that into a cream sauce with, a little rocket and bread and pasta. But there's all sorts of different things. There's a Third Kingdom in New York City. They're an entirely vegan, mushroom-based menu. Some people go totally lean into the culinary side. You can make stuffed mushrooms with the button mushrooms. There's a lot of different possibilities you can do with, mushrooms you find in the woods or cultivate indoors or outdoors. And so that's a whole world unto itself that you could explore. And the medicinal side, so a couple different aspects of this. Penicillin is from a fungus, so is cyclosporin. Some of the more important antibacterial and antifungal, antiviral drugs come from fungi. Penicillin's from it looks like it's a mold it's like a mold you'd see on bread almost. The penicillium is the fungus. And cyclosporin comes from a fungus that infects other fungi. Does anyone recognize this one, bottom left?
Chaga.
Yes, chaga. So this is actually not a mushroom, but this is the fungus that starts to, essentially is parasitizing a birch tree and starts to build what's called a sclerotium, and it's a nutrient store for the fungus. But it's 10 times more antioxidant dense than wild blueberries. And it also, a lot of it is wood. So it's concentrating betulinic acid from the birch tree into this knob or canker that you can break part of off and make a tea out of. You don't want to eat it every day. It's very antioxidant dense. You wouldn't want to drink the tea every day. But it's good, in the winter it's very earthy. And this is something, you might not get chaga. I don't know if you've seen it. Mark, have you seen it in Stanford?
I've seen it in Montreal, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, we might get some in the northern part of the state where there's more birch trees. But, that's a simple, kind of DIY medicinal thing. Some people make tinctures and extracts. There's a whole, more formal side to the medicinal aspect, whether it's, eventually becoming a pharmaceutical or, useful drug like penicillin, or people doing more folk style extracts, tinctures, salves. So there's different, if you want to do it more formally, you would research these things at a university. I went and talked to a guy up at Utica University, and he finds, he takes mushrooms in the woods and distills them down to crude extracts and then runs them in assays against cancer. And if there's an inhibition rate of over 50%, then he'll take the extract and break it down even further and find the actual compound that results in that inhibition of the cancer cells, and then sends that to, he kicks it out from there and sees if a pharmaceutical company is interested in trying to make a drug out of it. But that's how, you find new antibacterial drugs in the woods. All right. And then the psychedelic. So this, these up left, this is our Connecticut native psychedelic mushroom. These are from Darien, actually. And I can tell you where if you talk to me after.
I totally believe that.
but right, it is a Schedule 1 federal drug, so you don't want to be caught with it. However, they are looking right now, there's a lot of research. The most researched mushroom right now are psilocybin mushrooms. Johns Hopkins, NYU, Cal Berkeley have all opened up special facilities to research these drugs or the potential of psilocybin. This is just a study for a therapeutic effect of psilocybin in addiction, but it's been being looked at to help with addiction, PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, other mental disorders, and the thinking or the idea with psilocybin is that when you use it therapeutically, addiction, it's kind of like you do something in the morning, brushing your teeth. You don't actively think about it, and you channel these like neural pathways to the point because you don't want to have to think about brushing your teeth every morning. You have to automate some stuff, otherwise there's just too much stimuli in the world for your brain to kind of comprehend. And it's like sledding, so you're putting that groove down on a fresh, hill of snow. You put or skiing, you put one track down, and it's tough, but the next time you do it, it's a little easier, and you keep going down that path, you keep brushing your teeth the same way, and eventually it's a totally fluid motion. Well, what psilocybin does is it puts a fresh coat of snow. So if you have bad habits or addiction or tendencies that you're trying to, grow out of or deprogram, this is why they think it's useful. It helps with your default mode network. It helps kind of reset it. So, that can also be very destabilizing if you're at a concert and you eat too many or something. But this is kind of where a lot of people are getting interested in mushrooms is through, the psychedelic avenue and the research with it. There are people that do psychedelic-assisted therapy as well. It's not on this clinical level, but there'll be therapists that will administer psilocybin, and you sit with them and have a guided session, and that can be beneficial for people as well. So there's different avenues in the psychedelic, but it's kind of an exciting area. One, because of the illicitness. But also because there could be, genuine promise to help humans. The art. So this is one on the right. This is a reishi mushroom. So I have one going in the slide. If you cultivate it and keep it in a CO2 dense environment, so don't expose it. You basically keep those bags sealed, like we saw in the other picture. It grows these long antlers. And there's a guy, the fungi florist, he's out of LA, but he makes these ornate sculptures with reishi. So that's one thing you can do. Mary Banning is in Albany, New York. The State Museum has an exhibit with all of her illustrations going on. So she was a mycologist in the late 1800s or mid to late 1800s in Maryland. And she made all these beautiful hand-drawn illustrations of fungi she was finding in the woods with kind of elaborate descriptions of them. But even just regular prints or fungi drawing or stickers, the artistic aspect is something that I usually don't, encompass on my walks and stuff. But it's something that a lot of people are interested in and experiment with, whether it's this or even just taking a spore print, if anyone's done that. That's a very simple way to make mushroom art. MycoFest is a mushroom and arts festival in Pennsylvania. It's the first weekend of August. So if you're interested in mushroom art, that might be something you want to check out as well. Sustainability. So this other bottom left, this guy made the news recently. I know our president, John, likes his boat. This guy made a kayak out of mycelium. So people are experimenting with building materials and other, I guess not even just building, but like any sort of like plastic substitute they're trying to use mycelium for. He was honest, he said it took him a year to make, so it's not nearly like the technology's not nearly there, and it's not ramped up to be like a commercial level, but it is exciting even just as a proof of concept. He went across the Catalina Channel, so he went 26 miles to Catalina Island.
I have a quick question. Did he like just smash all the mushrooms together, or did he like grow them in like a mold?
Yeah, exactly, in a mold, and that's how it's done a lot of times. Whether it's a kayak-shaped one or something like this. This is from NASA, and they're experimenting with mycelial bricks that they can use on Mars. So that's at least something they're looking into. But it's a lot lighter than flying regular bricks up there. But also the structural integrity can be pretty sound. And then this is mushroom leather, which is, there's a company out of Ecovative Design out of Troy, New York, right north of Albany. And they do a lot of this mushroom leather, mushroom fabrics, making, anything from like like couches or lampshades to, wearable leather. Food as well, like bacon. They make a fake meat substitute with mycelium. And that's not, eating just regular shiitake mushrooms. That's eating, mycelium as fake meat. But tempeh as well, if anyone eats tempeh, and seitan. Those are both fungal related foods. So yeah, there's just a whole world of people trying to use mycelium, not the mushroom, but the mycelium, the body of the fungus, for different materials, whether it's for building or for clothes. So that's a neat aspect as well. And then one more, kind of dovetails off it, but microremediation. So there's a few different channels you can use, but fungi are really good at producing novel or enzymes. That's a lot of what they do is eat. I mean, that's kind of one of the main points of any organism. But they produce a lot of novel enzymes that can break down a lot of nasty compounds, like the hydrocarbons in gas and oil. So different places are looking at them as potential remedies for disturbed areas or places where there's an oil spill or construction sites, because they can also bioaccumulate heavy metals. But there's a whole world of people looking at, like, this is from USF, but different applications for fungi to clean the environment. Yeah, the interesting thing, I'm going to talk about a little later, but in Tangled Life, the guy had a oyster mushroom, which we saw earlier, growing out of entirely eating used cigarette butts. And those are, where like all the smoke and ash and stuff concentrates. But these oyster fungi, they're particularly vigorous, as I mentioned. They are able to, if you start growing them on something and then introduce them to use cigarette butts, they might not have the enzymes at that moment to digest the cigarette butts, but they're able to tap back, kind of like reassess and then produce the enzymes. So you can almost train them on anything at a certain level. They're able to go back into essentially their DNA and produce novel enzymes to then break down and turn, use cigarette butts into a form of carbon that they can eat, which is pretty neat. And then they fruit edible mushrooms, if you're so inclined. But this is, that's just one aspect, or the last aspect of mushrooms that I'll talk about. And then we'll go into a little bit of identification. I think,
Are they doing any microremediation here in Connecticut? There's some Superfund sites here, like one in Norwalk. Are they using any of these tools?
I couldn't answer that. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'll look into it. But
there's a coal ash site right here in Norwalk.
Really? Huh. Yeah, it's a promising idea. I don't know how much the state is employing it, but I think it's worth looking into at some level.
Yeah.
It's mostly a lot of stuff I see they're doing stuff in like South and Central America with some oil stuff, some oil spills down there. More locally, I think like in Baltimore, they have a couple like urban sites that they're experimenting with as well. So yeah, it's definitely, there's some promise. And even just something as simple as using like oyster mycelium to try and break some of these nasty inert hydrocarbons into something that even plants could then uptake or turn into, reintroduce these compounds into the carbon cycle.
Another quick follow-up.
Yeah.
You said they bioaccumulate heavy metals.
Yeah.
Is lead one of the metals that they can bioaccumulate?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, anything like lead, arsenic, that's why you don't want to eat those mushrooms. Like particularly like morels in an apple orchard, if it's an old orchard, they can, they'll put them in the fruiting body, and it's not totally understood why the mycelium will move like some of the heavier metals or compounds into the fruiting body. But they used to treat, apple orchards with arsenic as like a pesticide, and some of that's still in the soil, and the fungi can move that around, put it in like the morels. You wouldn't want to eat, I guess, the mushrooms growing at one of these super fun sites, but there's potential, for them to at least like those, the elements that can't be broken down, whether it's lead or arsenic. But some of the more complex compounds that can break down.
So they bioaccumulate the toxins into their fruiting bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But then if nothing eats the fruiting bodies, those fruiting bodies would just decompose. And
Right.
go back to the
So
soil.
lead would stay in the soil in that case. And that's something, unless you want to gather up the morels and throw them out, but once lead, they can't split an element, if it's something like that. It's more with these complex, polycarbons, oil and stuff for plastics that they're able to break down. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a good, nor is plants really, for stuff that's tainted with lead or other heavy elements. They're still working on figuring out. But there are fungi that grow in the reactors in Chernobyl. So some are able to use and consume radiation and get their nutrients from radioactive energy. So there's something there too. It's not my area of strength in mycology, but it is fascinating. And there's a lot of research to be done.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so then we're just going to go into some simple ID. This is for online references. So, if you find a mushroom in your yard, I like iNaturalist.org. Mushroom Observer is also very good. The New York Mycological Society, I should have put Connecticut Westchester as well, because that's our local club here. But the New York Mycological Society Zoom ID sessions, it's $20 to join for a year, and they do a Zoom session every other Monday. And that's, you just, hop on your computer from the comfort of your own home and share a picture of the mushroom you found, and then you have, some of the sharpest people in the country that can ID it. So that's an invaluable resource that I don't think enough people take advantage of. Michael Quo's Mushroom Expert as well is very good. But these are kind of at least the big four that I use. There's other ways you can go, but I think everyone, if you don't have an iNaturalist account, that not only does mushrooms, but plants as well. That's something, if you take anything out of this speech or this talk, sign up for iNaturalist and just start taking pictures of things in your yard. And that'll help you, start with your ID. And then physical references for ID. These are the 3 books I recommend. The one on the left, this is the newer edition of it. My cover doesn't look like this. But you have to be careful. Some of the books are now written by AI, and they're not reliable. Particularly if it's I think there's a book on Amazon, it's for every state, but it'll be Mushrooms of Connecticut. That's no good. You want this Baroni Mushrooms of Northeastern United States and Eastern Canada. He's a SUNY Cortland professor, so a lot of these, he's not state over, but a lot of the mushrooms in it are particular to our, New York, Connecticut woods. This middle book, National Audubon Society Field Guide to Mushrooms. This is the older edition. I don't think the new edition is very good, and from what the other, that kind of is the consensus. You want this older one with this red leather cover. This was written by Gary Linkoff, who was a pretty important member of the Connecticut Westchester Mycological Association. I don't know, Mark, maybe you got to go on a walk with him.
Yeah?
Yeah,
He's
and
quite something.
yeah, he was quite something. And then this Peterson Field Guide. What's nice about this one is these are illustrations, so they're drawings, but they're very anatomically accurate. And it's also nice to look at, so it's kind of combining the mushroom art with useful scientific information. But those are the 3 physical resources if you want to go for a hike and bring something along with you and not be like looking at your phone and taking pictures and stuff. These are probably the 3 these are the 3 I recommend. And continued education, yeah, join your local mushroom club, COMA, the Connecticut Westchester Mycological Association. Mark's a member. And they actually, I was a member when I was living in the area, and they did a walk in Altschul for morels. I don't think they found any, but nor have I found any.
Well, if we did, we wouldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's true. So, but they're doing walks in the area every weekend throughout the growing season. So it's a terrific resource. Or go to a weekend-long foray. Coma, again, Mark and I were up to Litchfield, Connecticut in Labor Day weekend and spent a weekend up there looking for mushrooms with the group. There's also Nymph, which was just in Ithaca, and that pops around as the Northeastern Mycological Federation. And then there's NAMA, which is a lot of acronyms, the North American Mycological Association. But they all have weekend-long forays where, again, the sharpest people either in the Northeast or North America get together and look for mushrooms. You can pick up, some of the sharpest people in this field. What it drew me to it is that they're very accessible and they're very open and engaging with their knowledge. Everyone's there to share, and they're very friendly about it. So there's no, stigma if you're a beginner and you're just getting into it. If anything, it's very encouraging, and everyone's excited to help. Yeah, you could go to a festival as well on the same scale. Those are a little less scientific. Fungus Fest was this weekend in New York City, but there was MycoFest and Telluride. Those kind of draw like the fungal umbrella, all the different aspects of mycology. It's not so much identification oriented as it is more you'll get people that are doing cultivation and people doing the biomaterials. So that's, if you have a broader interest in mushrooms, that might be something you explore. Learn your trees is a good place too if you're trying to do mushroom ID. Learning your trees, that'll help. Either just knowing what tree you're looking at in the area. A lot of times certain mushrooms will only grow on a certain type of wood or around a certain tree. So that will help you. And that kind of gives you at least like a baseline for ID. If you start to learn your trees, how to look at the bark and how to look at leaves, you start picking up on skills that can translate into learning how to identify mushrooms, whether you're looking at the underside, whether it's the gills, pores, those sorts of things. That I wasn't going to drag us through tonight, but if you come on one of the walks, that's what we talk about. And then look for mushrooms in different mushrooms in different seasons. These are Dendrostilbilla smaragdina. These are infinitesimally small little blue drops that were growing on pine wood in January, but it's a fungus, and the vapor, like the liquid actually, those drops evaporate and the spores then become airborne. But there's a lot of fascinating things going on, not just, the big foraging gregarious edible mushrooms. There's fascinating things happening on a microscopic scale. You can find anything, like if you go out in Altschul in January, you could, if you had your wits about you, find at least 50 species of fungi in a couple hours. I do not doubt that. Then, Read Entangled Life by Roland Sheldrake. That was a large catalyst for me. I put that in the thing, in the newsletter. But that's a great book that kind of goes a little more in depth into all the different aspects that fungi do. in our environment, and how they can possibly help humanity as well. I believe that is it. Yeah, thank you.